Hello, I'm Consuelo Rodriguez and I am part of class HS42. I decided to do my research paper on crisis intervention. I work at a women's homeless shelter, so oftentimes when the women are having crisis, I don't know what to say, so I felt like doing a research on this would be perfect for me. Alright, so basically, a crisis is usually a turning point in one's life in which circumstances in their life changes. Change for people can often be really difficult and hard to cope with. I know it is for me. It's easy to be complacent in your everyday life, but we have to remember that change can be a good thing sometimes. Being in a crisis can often feel like severe confusion or suffering. While some crises are developmental, others are situational. So some examples of like developmental crises would be puberty, pregnancy, marriage. Um, these are all developing. So that is why they're always expected. Usually, it's a there's some time before you reach that crisis. Therefore, it isn't as abrupt as like a developmental crisis. I mean, situational crisis. Situational crises can be predictable sometimes, like failing grades or divorce. Um, those things don't just happen overnight. I mean, you could just like wake up one day and decide you want a divorce, but I mean, there's a lot of paperwork involved in that, so it's not just something that you can do right away. So that's a situational crisis that is predictable. Things that are really unpredictable would be maybe like a natural disaster, a sudden death within your family, maybe a traumatic event that can give you PTSD, something that you've seen that totally like yeah. So crisis interventions basically, like I said, they're short-term interventions to mental, emotional, physical, and behavioral distress. They can be long-term as well too. There's for the long terms, there's usually multiple sessions that go with it. It just depends on the severity of the situation. Excuse me. um, so we immediately do these interventions because we want to avoid clients from developing any long-term mental illnesses like PTSD. Also, major depressive order can be can come from that. Um, so if we immediately address the crisis, we can minimize the potential of all the long-term trauma. So a successful intervention consists of obtaining background information, establishing a positive, healthy relationship with clients, discussing events that took place, and by providing emotional support. I have written down the 10 stages of acute traumatic stress management that I didn't include in my essay. So that would be assess for danger, safety, self, and others. So when someone is going through a crisis, if they already are a drinker or a user, or have been in the past, it would be easy to go back to that, kind of as like a coping type of skill. That's why having those interventions is really important. So, we can find other ways for them to cope. Different strategies. I'll get more into that a little bit later. So number 2 would be consider the assess for danger, safety, self, and others. Not only drug usage, but also if someone has suicidal tendencies or they're depressed, we need to keep an eye out on like suicidal tendencies to make sure that a person doesn't go through with that. As for others, people can have erratic behavior and start to inflict pain on others. Okay. So number 2, consider the mechanisms of injury. 3, evaluate level or responsiveness. So at times when someone is going through a crisis, they're like up here, when their mental baseline can be like right here. So we need to like basically like go back and bring them back to their mental baseline so we can appropriately help them. um, Number 4, address medical needs. So if this person is already struggling with medical issues that would flare up with a crisis happening, maybe like the PTSD, the suicidal thoughts that I mentioned earlier, things like that. Sorry, my cat keeps looking at me. Number 5, observe and identify. So, when we have a person in front of us, even if they are, not being very responsive and not giving us the answers that we need in order to help them, we can pay attention to their body language. And, oftentimes facial expressions will say a lot. I know I carry my emotions on my face, so it is very easy to tell how I'm feeling. Posture as well. If someone, okay, well, people can have poor posture, but there is a sense in the way someone moves their body and their mannerisms that may come off as maybe they can be uncomfortable, like being in the environment, maybe they're not fully accepting of the help yet. So it is really important to keep an eye out on those things if the client isn't being too vocal about their situation and about the help, because we would need them to assist us in telling us in what they need in order for us to help them. Oh yeah, I was reading from my research paper. Okay. So a successful intervention consists of obtaining healthy. So there's like a model called SAFER-R. I think that's how you pronounce it. It's a model used in intervention, and the acronym stands for stabilization, acknowledgement, facilitate understanding, encouragement, recovery, and referral. And this is going to bring the patient to their mental baseline. Another acronym that we use is FRAMESWORK. So what FRAMESWORK is, it's feedback, responsibility of personal control, avoids change, menus, a way to reduce drug or alcohol intake, empathetic counseling, and self-efficiency or optimism. What stands out to me the most about both of these models is empathy. It is really important to create an environment in which a client feels completely comfortable. They feel like they want to share things with you, not because they need to, but because they want to. I've often struggled with, people who struggled with substance use disorder, and, as much as I would like to help them, I would want them to want that help for themselves, want the change, because I feel like it's the best way to get the most accurate outcome. That's what I'm trying to say. Okay. So basically, I'm gonna wrap it up and say that crisis interventions can take place in many places, like hospitals, schools, clinics, social services, office, drug rehab centers. What's really important about the hospitals and the clinics is that oftentimes when clients do go to these scenes, the first people that they encounter are nurses and first responders. So it is very, very important to be empathetic and to be considerate of the declining mental health that a person might be going through. What is also very, very important is communication. We need to be able to communicate with other workers about how a client was exhibiting behavior or what was happening within that moment, because within 10 minutes that they go to the next person, they can feel differently, but we still need to get to the main root of the problem. So I like how I ended my little essay. I said we may not all be professionals, but we have the ability to offer the use of humor, emotional support, planning, and acceptance when encountered with someone experiencing a crisis, this being a superior of mental health outcomes. I feel like we all have the power to help someone who's going in a crisis, whether it be a friend, a family member, or even just a stranger on the street, often I know I see people crying sometimes, and my heart breaks because I don't know what I can do. But some of these things are so simple, like the use of sense of humor. It doesn't cost anything to make someone smile. It's not something that you can learn from a book. It can come to you naturally. Emotional support. Us humans, we all have the ability to emotionally support each other, so why not do it? Planning. If we can plan for ourselves, why can't we share that? Why can't we share those? Why can't we share planning? Our planning. What's the word? Our planning ideas like with someone else, so they can better understand how they could or can plan it, not how they should, but like basically like an example. And acceptance, we all need to accept each other at the end of the day, because not trying to get religious, but we're no one to judge. That's his job or whoever's job, or who that's just not our place to judge. So we really do need to accept people, because we've all been through our hardships, and I think the world just needs more accepting than it does judging nowadays. So with this crisis intervention report, I'm actually really grateful that I studied and researched it, although it was a long time coming. I feel like I definitely learned a lot, and that's basically it. Thank you, and I'll see you HS 4235. I don't know.